Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to Ask Wrestle Juice. You guys once again left a bunch of great questions in the comments thread. That's why you should be hitting that subscribe button and that little notify bell to make sure you're always aware of when I put up a new questions thread. Maybe you can have a question read right here on Ask Wrestle Juice. Let's dive into it. Mr. Elson K says, simple question. How can WWE solve the Roman Reigns issue of holding two belts hostage? So apparently, according to Sports Illustrated, Roman Reigns will not be defending his title at Money in the Bank, as was originally the plan back when WWE had announced it as a big stadium show. They didn't sell enough tickets, so they had to shrink it down to an arena show. And now apparently Roman's not going to be on that show, which would mark, assuming he shows up at SummerSlam, which reports indicate he will. I don't have any sources. The other Fightful has sources, not me. Which reports suggest that he's going to be at SummerSlam. That would make about 4 months. 4 months between title defenses. Okay, so hold on. A couple hours after I filmed this, of course, they would do this. On SmackDown, Riddle won a match against Sami Zayn, which allowed him to get a title shot next week on SmackDown. So the whole streak of Roman Reigns not defending his title will be interrupted between here and SummerSlam. They're just not doing it on pay-per-view. So the rest of what I have to say in this particular question is still relevant because I still talk about the general idea of Roman Reigns not defending his title on a regular, consistent, every pay-per-view basis. So we'll just allow Steve, me, to just keep on talking, but just keep in mind that the rest of this answer, SmackDown hadn't aired yet. So there you go. Steve, just go ahead and take it away. I'm not a huge fan of it, although I will say this. I have been recently kind of enjoying Raw. I think that they have some things going for them. Obviously, he's injured now, but Cody versus Seth, I thought was a quality feud that kept me engaged. What they're doing with Becky Lynch right now, I like. What they're doing with Ezekiel, Elias, and Kevin Owens, I like. So there's a lot that I actually appreciate about WWE programming right now on Raw and SmackDown that doesn't necessitate Roman Reigns being there. At the end of the day, all I want is an entertaining program. Whether or not Roman factors into that, it doesn't really bother me that much. Doesn't make his title defenses seem like a bigger deal. Maybe if they market it that way as a big match. Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns in September at Clash of the Castle seems like it's going to be a big deal. Would I get that same feeling with Riddle and Roman Reigns? Here's the thing. They're already building that story with Riddle and Roman Reigns. So, why not just have the match? You can tell an interesting story beat there, even though we know Riddle's not going to win. Plus, you get to feature Riddle in a main event role, which is what I think they're going to want for him down the line anyways. And why not start preparing the crowd for that eventuality by starting to feature him in more main event roles, like a title shot against Roman Reigns, even in a losing effort. So I can sort of see both sides of it. My opinion is, I think you need to have some sort of happy medium. I'm not sure he should go 3 pay-per-views without defending his title. That'd be Backlash, Hell in a Cell, and Money in the Bank without defending his title. It's not a great look. But at the same time, if they're just going to do the same thing with him that they did with Brock, it worked. Kind of, I guess. I don't know. People are still kind of split about that too. So I don't know. Is it a problem? I guess time will tell. It's not like Raw or SmackDown's ratings are just killing it right now, so maybe they could use Roman Reigns. At the same time, at Hell in a Cell, the main event was a show-stealing main event. Cody versus Seth Rollins. Granted, it had mostly to do with Cody's arm, but I don't know. They're telling A-level stories without the A guy. At the end of the day, all I care about is that my wrestling's entertaining, and I've been entertained for the most part. I've been sports entertained. Jamie Sims says, for the first time probably since its inception, this past Dynamite has had some major points in it where I actively disagreed with the approach they were taking to get to a certain story. With that being said, do you think AEW's hit a bump in creative, or do you think this would be happening regardless of Punk's injury? Well, Punk's injury is kind of important. Thanks for the question, Jamie. And there's more people missing too. Adam Cole has an injury right now, although it seems like he might be back soon, given how he's been talking about Forbidden Door. Bryan Danielson's out with some sort of injury. Obviously, Kenny Omega's out. And then, of course, Punk's out, and MJF's got the contract situation. So you have some major names that are missing from the show. So I don't know. I guess they're kind of lucky in that they got Forbidden Door coming up where you have a whole other company coming in. But I feel like every pro wrestling company has its peaks and valleys creatively, and we should expect no less from AEW. Now, I think there are some things that AEW is doing right now that leaves a little bit to be desired. I am shocked at how poorly Wardlow has come off over the past 2 weeks, ever since his win over MJF at Double or Nothing. The match itself at Double or Nothing was a problem in itself because it was sort of overshadowed by the MJF contract stuff. The match itself really was not that great, and it didn't really showcase Wardlow in the way that he really should have. That match should have propelled him to the main event. And then what's the first thing he says just this past week? Not the first thing, but one of the first things he says, I don't want to go after the world title for a really stupid reason that doesn't make any amount of logic. I'd rather go after the TNT title. Immediately, he wants to go after a mid-card title. That doesn't sit right with me. I understand that they don't want to write themselves into a corner where Wardlow can kind of beat everybody. And so why wouldn't he go after the title and win it? I understand that. I feel like there's a way you can get around that, and it's pretty simple. He just got signed to AEW. His record should be 0-0 right now. So he's having to start from the bottom. Maybe the logic is I'm starting from the bottom. My first sight is the TNT title. And when Punk gets back, maybe I'll focus on the TNT title now, showing that I can prove myself, and then I'll work my way up from there. I don't know. I think it's Wardlow has been, it's been kind of interesting to see just how great the story of Wardlow coming up was. And then just in 2 weeks, it's sort of falling flat. They did kind of the same thing with Hangman Page. His story to get to the title was really good. Once he got the title, sort of fell flat. So maybe Tony Khan needs to work on follow-through story ideas. Maybe plot out a story not just to when they achieve that goal, but what happens after then. It's still a new product. 3 years is not that long a time, and Tony Khan's not seemingly having many cooks in his kitchen to help him with creative. So maybe he'll find out sooner than later that, hey, maybe you needed Cody, or maybe you needed somebody like that with you to sort of shoot ideas your way, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like all wrestling's going to have ups and downs. Hopefully they'll come back up on an upswing, or things might have to change, creatively speaking, when it comes to writing. Next up, Billy Edkin says, with the recent injuries to Punk and Cody, do you think wrestlers are pushing themselves way too hard for the sake of outdoing the competition? This is a really good question, and it kind of comes down to the wrestler. First up with CM Punk, I feel like that's kind of always been his thing. Like even when he was in WWE, he would be injured from time to time, mainly because this dude takes everything he has and he leaves it in the ring. And I've always appreciated that about Punk. I've always really liked that. But I also understand that it comes with that. It comes with the idea that, man, this guy's going to be banged up. He's not like John Cena. He's a normal person. John Cena is not a normal person. He is completely and totally a freak. And so with CM Punk, it's unfortunately kind of to be expected, especially in AEW when Tony Khan sort of lets his wrestlers do whatever they want to do. He's going to go all the way every time. With Cody, look, it seems like he wasn't going to do any more damage to his torn pectoral muscle. And in Cody's situation, I just get the feeling that it was an old school, him participating in Hell in a Cell was, hey, I have this massive contract with you, WWE. I want to make sure it's good. I want to make sure I give the fans what they want. It's that old school wrestling mentality. Not surprising, given that he is from wrestling royalty. So I don't know. I kind of feel like on one hand, it should be up to the wrestlers. I don't really necessarily think it has to do with outdoing the competition. I think it has more to do with their professionalism and wanting to put on the best show because all these people paid them or paid the company money to come see the show and they were advertised. I think that's just sort of an old school work ethic thing. I do think that certain younger wrestlers need to be sort of, counseled about how to handle their career long-term, maybe by veterans. For example, Darby Allin's style obviously is, I don't want to call it reckless because he's a professional and he knows what he's doing, but it can be very damaging and give his body wear and tear. I hope he's keeping an eye to the future. I don't know that Jeff Hardy's the kind of guy that Tony Khan should be saying yes to for everything. But then again, these are professionals. They're grown-ass men, and they know best. So who am I to say, hey, stop doing something? So I don't know. If the question is, do you think they're pushing themselves way too hard? That's sort of for them to decide, not for me as a fan. I do get nervous sometimes when Jeff Hardy's out there because I'm like, dude, I know the facts. He's older. His body's been through a ton. He's had substance issues in the past. Should he be doing crazy shit every time he goes out there? Maybe not. But again, I'm a fan sitting here on the sidelines. Him and Tony Khan, I guess, should know best. John Davies says, hey, Steve, have you ever considered what you might do when or if you decide to finish the podcast? No, because I kind of plan on doing the podcast as long as humanly possible. Going in Raw is, it's my career. It's my business. It's my baby. It's me and Larson's baby. And I don't want to not do it. So after I do the podcast, I'd like to retire, but I'll probably still keep busy. He asks here if I have any other ambitions or hobbies I'd like to pursue. I've always wanted to try my hand at comic books again. That was the first thing I ever tried coming out of college. I tried to self-publish comic books and make that my career, and I failed miserably at it. And but it'd be fun to try that again because I really love drawing and I love writing and I love all that kind of stuff. It's just hard to find the time these days to do that when I already have a career in Going In Raw and, of course, here at WrestleJuice. We'll sort of dovetail into this question from Devontae Porter. Says, how do you keep yourself motivated to make videos? He talks about the stuff with me and Larson, and over here at WrestleJuice, he'd love some advice. Well, Devontae, I'll be honest with you. I really love pro wrestling. I love watching it. I love talking about it. I love talking about it with Larson. I love everything I do. And so that alone keeps me motivated. Practically speaking, though, it's my business. It's how I pay my mortgage, feed my family, et cetera, et cetera. Lacey wants new carpets and she wants to paint the walls. So if I'm able to, do that, then I'll have a happy wife. And that leads to a happy life. So I sort of have to do it at this point. That doesn't mean I don't like it. I love it. It's a lot of fun. And that keeps me motivated enough. I feel very lucky being able to do this for a living. And that keeps me motivated as well. Tristan A says, do you think the AEW All Atlantic title would be a traveling title being defended both in and out of AEW? And should there be a stipulation where you can't defend it against somebody from the same country? He points out Stardom's SWA World Championship. No, I kind of feel like I'm not a fan of that particular stipulation. I think that it's going to be basically the Intercontinental Championship. Look, I want to bottom line this. The AEW All Atlantic title is going to be the Miro title. He's going to have this title for a very long time. Eventually somebody will take it off him. But I feel like Miro's not going to have the world title anytime soon, maybe ever. And this is a perfect title for him because I think he needs a title. And I think he's going to win it. I think he's going to keep it for a very long time. And they're going to treat that as sort of a secondary world, not a secondary world title, but probably on par or greater than the TNT title. TNT title is basically the television title. Marky Mark has a great question. He says, do you believe it's more on the wrestler mostly to make whatever gimmick or character work for the company? Or is it 50-50? It takes both. I feel like it's 80-20. I feel like a wrestler who really invests in whatever they're given can often be successful with it. I'll give you two examples. Number one, Riddick Moss, taking the Madcap Moss character and actually making something out of it. It's a dog shit idea what they did with him. Just a sidekick who tells jokes. He made the most out of it. He was able to transition that character into something more than just a one-note gimmick. And now he's still Madcap Moss, but with a serious edge. And he had a pretty good feud with Baron Corbin. So I don't know where they're going to take Moss, but up until now, he's done everything and more that could be possibly expected after having been given a really crappy story. Another example would be Ezekiel. What a terrible idea. It's a hilarious idea, but it's a really bad one, but he's really made something with it. They took that gimmick and they put it on the perfect person, added Kevin Owens, Chad Gable to the whole story, and it's been really successful. So I do think that so much of it is dependent on the wrestler, as long as he's given the opportunity to showcase whatever gimmick it is. All right, next up, Spectre Outcast says, do you ever go back and listen to any old podcasts you've done with Larson? No, I watch some of our stuff. Sometimes I watch like old intros from 10 for the Win. Sometimes I watch old compilations of funny stuff from Going In Raw or like Smash Zone or whatever. But like now, my wrestling opinions and thoughts have changed so much over the past years. I have no desire to go back and look at old stuff because it kind of makes me cringe. So no, it kind of makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to do that. Moving on, a couple more questions here. Richard Ives asks, do you think the Ruthless Aggression era was more memorable and entertaining than peak WCW from the mid to late 90s? This is me personally speaking. I love my WCW from the mid to late 90s. It's when I first started watching wrestling. So that's always going to have a special place in my heart. Ruthless Aggression is when I started to kind of tune out at WWE. I feel like back then I thought that they really botched the invasion stuff. I kind of understand why, and even understood then why, because of the contract situations. But no, peak WCW will always have a special place in my heart. Nathan UFC says, with the reports that Vince forced Stephanie McMahon out of WWE and Triple H being effectively sidelined and his baby NXT being completely changed in appearance and recruitment policy in his absence, do you think there's an increased chance that either one of them or both could end up working for AEW? No, not a chance in hell. The WWE empire is way too big. It's massive. And if Triple H and Stephanie went to AEW, their stock would probably tank. They'd be tanking their own stock. They'd be tanking their own wealth, regardless of how much Tony Khan would be paying them. So no, there's zero chance either of them goes to AEW. Is there a chance they move on to a different business outside of wrestling? Possibly. I do not see them going to AEW, though. That will never happen. I think that it just financially, it would be a complete non-starter for them. So no, I'm going to say no to that. And then let's see here. Pro Jeff says, I saw a news story that said MJF is thinking pretty hard about getting to Hollywood. What happens to AEW if it just straight up ditches them? And would he do that? Oh, I don't know. I think AEW would go on. I don't think AEW is dependent on one person being there or not being there. I think it would take a lot more than MJF leaving for them to fall into dust. So yeah, I think they would just move on. They would just move on. I don't really think it'd be that big of a deal. Deep Voice Dude says, when do you think Brock Lesnar will wrestle again and against whom? He seems to still enjoy it. Like he told Pat McAfee, he wants to keep on doing it. So I kind of assume he's going to keep on doing it. As far as who would be next, I don't know. Who are they building up? Riddle would be a match because he always said he didn't want to do the Riddle match. So I could see how if they really start building up Riddle, I could see how Brock would understand that would be a money match. I could see that. We'll end on this one. Ethan asks, are there any news stories that you and Larson don't look forward to talking about or reporting, whether it be lack of interest or being a touchy subject? Things we generally don't touch on are events that happen in pro wrestling, in a pro wrestler's life, rather, that have nothing to do with wrestling. For example, there was recently a Jake Atlas domestic abuse thing that happened. We didn't talk about that because it doesn't have anything to do with the world of wrestling. It was just a sad situation for all parties involved, and I felt really bad about it. We're not going to touch that for views. When the speaking out stuff happened, that was difficult to talk about because it was so heavy. It did affect wrestling, but it was just really heavy stuff. We tried our damnedest to approach it with some amount of class, but that stuff is really difficult to talk about. So yeah, whenever it involves real life trauma or tragedy, it's very difficult to talk about. And, sometimes we have to. It's not very often, but sometimes we have to. And we do the best we can. And we don't always succeed at being good at it, but we try. We definitely try. So anyways, that's going to do it for us. Check out these other videos here. Listen, Steve Thunder's coming back. He's coming to Friendo Club TV. I kicked him off this channel because he was dragging my algorithm down. Friendo Club TV, we don't really care about the algorithm over there yet. So we put him over there with some other 2K22 content. So check out Steve Thunder. You can set your notification here and check out the playlist that I made for Steve Thunder content to catch up with it. Another episode directed by Rob is coming up tomorrow on Saturday. So check that out. And then up here, I've got another video that I did. I don't even know what video I did recently. Let's see here. What am I going to put here? I will put the video, about 5 better names than Mox that should have been AEW interim champion. I did it before Mox won that thing on AEW, but it still applies. Thanks for watching. We'll see you over at one of those videos.